The battle to reopen America is underway. South Carolina's got its stores and beaches coming back into action soon. Florida has opened some of its beaches. Meanwhile, New Jersey cops are using drones to spy on you in your backyard. Was the NYC subway the super spreader of COVID-19? Sweden says its approach is working. Paycheck protection, however, is failing. And Orwell hated journos too. That and more coming up.
We've already built sufficient testing capacity nationwide for states to begin their reopenings. And I think you'll be hearing a lot about reopenings in the coming weeks and months. Most excitingly, in the coming weeks, I think you're going to see some very, very dramatic steps taken, and very safely. We're putting safety first. We may be opening, but we're putting safety first.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. Thank you so much for being here. All right, this is where we are now as a country. The single most important issue for all of us to decide, and we all must have a voice in this one. We all have to have an opinion. We should share our opinions. We should have our voices heard. When do we get to start living our lives again, at least in part? Now, I'm not saying we get to go back to normal tomorrow or next month, or at this rate, even next year. I'm just saying we have to start pushing for normalcy, start moving in that direction, start deciding that this is something that we're going to do, even if, yes, it is imperfect. And there are risks attached to it. I've been saying all along, people need to understand life has risk. You leave your apartment, bad things, or your house. Sorry, I'm in New York, so I always think of apartments. Bad things can happen to you. I'm reminded of the scene in the movie Heat, which I think just had its 20th anniversary in the last couple of weeks, where Al Pacino tells a would-be informant, a snitch, in fact, "You get killed walking your doggy." And then he bangs on the table because in the classic Pacino moment, he overacts a little bit. I like Pacino, but sometimes a little too far. But it is true. You can, in fact, get killed walking your doggy, which I'm reminded of every time I go outside walking Tallulah here in the midst of what we're seeing as a pandemic worse in New York than anywhere else in the country and perhaps even the world. I want to break down for you. I finally saw a paper that looks at how the subway system may very well have been the huge negative factor here for New York. Many of us have thought that all along. I've been telling my family members that. And there's a lot to unpack there. It means a lot for you. If you live in Nebraska, what's up, KFAB Omaha? If you live in Austin, what's up, KLBJ Austin? If you live in San Diego or Denver or you name it, and you hear about the New York City subway research that's been done now on the spread of this virus, you might say, okay, that makes sense. And we don't have 4 million people a day getting on the subway. Or 4 million subway rides, I should say. So maybe we're in a very different situation than New York. So that's important. Even if you're not in the tri-state area, it's important for you to hear that analysis. I really dug into it over the weekend. It lines up with what I've thought all along. It all makes, to those of us who know the city, it all makes sense. And it'll be, I think, encouraging for you in other parts of the country who are saying, hold on a second, why can't we open? It'll be encouraging for you to hear that if you don't have a mass transportation system that the city is completely reliant on, you are in that is why you are in and will continue to be in much better shape than we are here in New York. So as I was saying, we have a lot to dig into today. But my biggest initial takeaway for all of you is that we are getting a reminder here that we are seeing something that many of us have known all along was going to be a reality. But we're only 1 month into this lockdown. And we're getting constant reminders that even during a crisis, or perhaps especially during one, allowing the government to determine the extent of its own powers is a very bad idea. This is a lesson we have seen countless times throughout history, but we always forget it when we're scared, don't we? We forget it the moment that it seems we need the government to keep us safe and warm. We need the government to protect us. The government is always going to disappoint you. And I need you to remember, folks, this is not about Trump right now, meaning that this analysis that I'm giving you on the ineptitude of government Trump is better at what he is doing at his position in government than other presidents. True. But there are still limitations of government. I think even the president himself would admit that, although, he has a very high opinion of his abilities still. There are going to be shortcomings for the government. The Paycheck Protection Program, I spoke to a very good friend of mine over the weekend who walked me through in detail what his company is going through right now. $100,000 of payroll they can't meet for the next couple of months. You think they're getting any money from Paycheck Protection? $0. No money left in the piggy bank. Harvard got, I think it was $9 million, and they've got a $40 billion endowment. And the government turns around and tells people who are getting who are having to lay off their employees, lay off the people that have built these companies. Oh, no, sorry, there's no money left for you. How is there no money left? And now we're talking about a $500 billion bailout fund for state and local governments. My friends, here's really where we are on this. The government has shown us exactly why we need limitations on its authority, limitations on its power, why we have a Bill of Rights. We've been reminded of all this in just the last 4 to 6 weeks. Because you see, the trade-off isn't give away your rights and we'll make everything better. That's not the trade-off that government makes. The trade-off, especially during a crisis, is give away or we will take away your rights. And then the thing that we promise you in return will be delivered as a half measure. It won't be nearly as good or as safe or as helpful as we claim it will be. And the moment you have a problem with it, we'll tell you, shut up, peasant. It's a crisis. Go back inside. Go look at your empty bank account and your children and your wife and your husband and your aunts and uncles and whoever else you're supporting, your grandkids. Go back and look them in the eye and say, sorry, can't do anything about this. The government told me no work, stay indoors. It's getting worse and worse here in New York. The situation with the virus is getting better, but the overreach and the insanity of the liberal mentality is unfortunately growing with every day. Oh, wow, you mean that we can tell people, do as I say or else, with any aspect of their life? Anything. You can't go outside and do things unless we say you can. You can't leave your home unless we tell you you can. We can put you under virtual house arrest while you're healthy and have done nothing wrong because we say so. You ever have the experience? I've had this in D.C. many times. I've had it in New York, too, where there'll be some motorcade for any president, doesn't matter. And sometimes, and I will say it, I have friends who are in the Secret Service. I do. But sometimes the Secret Service can be deeply imperious and jerks when it comes to things like this. I've had it happen to me a few times where they're unnecessarily snippy when you ask, sir, can I cross this? I'm always very polite to anybody who's doing their job. Trust me. But, you've had that moment, can I cross the street? I've got to get to work, or how long will it be? Or I'm going to call my boss, quiet. Stay here till we say so. I mean, I've had that interaction with Secret Service. I remember once one of them told me, move to the left. And I moved to the left. And he said, your other left. And I said, well, brilliant man, you said left, and that's my left. If you wanted your left, but this is the stuff you deal with Secret Service sometimes. Some of them are great. I'm not saying, but I've had a few. But it's a little bit like the Praetorian Guard telling you this is the way it is. Can't get home? Too bad. We need a 6-block perimeter for the president. We need to have a battalion's worth of agents and police and everybody else around with machine guns and everything just in case. It's absurd. What, I mean, really? Are the North Koreans paradropping into Central Park right now? Get out of here. It's out of control. Anyone who's lived in D.C. knows. And you sit there and you realize, wow, so what really are my rights here? Can the Secret Service tell me that I can't cross the street, that I have to stand on this corner for 6 hours? Can't go to the bathroom, can't do anything. I'm stuck here, huh? I can't move. I'm effectively under arrest because they say so. Now, some of you may have had this experience before. I have, and you say, what really are the limitations of the government's authority here? And you start to realize that there's that part of you, that deeply human yearning for autonomy and freedom and respect. And you say, well, hold on a second. What is really the justification for this? Oh, because, the president or the vice president or whoever it is less safe by What, me, the former CIA officer who's trying to get home to his apartment, who has no backpack, no weapon, no nothing on him whatsoever? Like, what are we really doing here? You got to ask yourself. But we're all getting a little taste of that feeling right now of stay where we tell you. You didn't do anything wrong. Shut up and do what you're told. This is now the argument that you're getting, especially when, the data, my friends, and I'm not going to forget all the journos running around. You just want grandma to die. No, the data shows that social distancing and basic precautions, of course, helpful for preventing the spread of COVID-19 or any respiratory disease. Locking down, staying at home, can't go to work, even with mask and gloves on, even if you're young and healthy and at low risk. School shut down. The data does not show these to be good ideas. And you know what's going to happen? The government is going to want to just move past this as quickly as possible in some places, and other places are going to double down even more. Because the longer they extend the lockdown, the harder it will be to look at the data as we have it right now and say, hold on a second. You guys are doing you're doing the wrong thing here. We start to loosen, we start to open up a little bit, and we see that there's no big spike in cases. Well, why have we been doing this for over a month? And I mean, in New York, it's really 6 weeks. You've been on de facto lockdown. But if you ever have a question about what the government's really like, just remember right now in New Jersey, there's law enforcement they're using drones that I believe are manufactured in China. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it. You got drones being manufactured, and they're being used to spy on people in their own backyards to see if they're engaging in sufficient social distancing. If you had written this in some kind of dystopian novel about the transition to an authoritarian technocratic society or technology-based society, if you had written that, people would say, come on. And we're already there. They're doing it. And they're proud of it. Producer Mark, do we even have do we have that clip? I sent it to you last minute. It's all right if we don't have it.
No.
Yeah, whatever. There's a clip of a local newscaster in New Jersey. Here, I'll tell you, I'm just as good at it as a newscaster. Oh, look at these drones that they're using to enforce social distancing. Guess what? That should put all of us on edge. They're going to send drones to spy on you in your backyard to make sure you're not hanging out with too many family members? You got 12 people in the backyard? This is what they're really doing? We don't even know how many people in New York and New Jersey have been infected. Serology testing, here's what I can tell you about serology testing. We don't know the real numbers yet. It's very hard. And you're trying to extrapolate out to a much broader sample, a much broader size population than what you're dealing with in the sample. But guess what? All serology testing, and I'll give you some of the numbers on it, all of it shows that there are vast numbers of people beyond the established cases who have been exposed to and have COVID-19 antibodies. It's at least 10x, maybe more like 50 to 75x the actual established cases in some places. So there are a lot of people that are being told stay home who have effectively, they don't know it yet, have effectively zero risk of getting or spreading this disease unless it turns out you can't be immune from it even if you get it. And if that's the case, my friends, we got big problems. But I don't think that would be specific to this respiratory infection. And why would that be the case unless, of course, somebody was tinkering with this somewhere in a lab? But that's a conversation for another time. And I do mean that. We will have that conversation another time. We limit government authority regardless of how benevolent they think their intentions are. We maintain individual autonomy. We maintain our freedoms and our right to choose how we live our day-to-day lives, not, infringing on other people, not stealing their stuff, not hurting them. But what we see here is that the government, that's not sufficient. Do as we say based on faulty data, based on panic, because the liberal journo establishment, the Democratic Party, and yes, much of the Republican Party got dragged into a moment of political panic. And so all the rest of us were told, stay home, do as we say, or else, peasant. Sorry, you don't have a paycheck? We'll get you a paycheck. Oh, we can't get you the paycheck because we're too stupid to shovel as the government. We're too stupid to shovel your own money out of the helicopter fast enough to you after we've told you you can't work? Welcome to government, my friends. It's always been this way. We're just seeing once again why this will never change. It's a lesson that we keep forgetting, and we are learning it once again.
New Yorkers, you have been extraordinary at social distancing. And let me tell you, it has taken every fiber of our beings to figure out how to do this because we're warm, emotional people. We're used to being close to each other. We're used to being packed into subway cars, and we've had to do the exact opposite and figure out how to keep distance. It's not natural for us. It's not normal for us, but you've done it. You've done an amazing job. Now, look, thank you, everyone who's done it the right way, but we still know there's some people who need to get the message. And that means sometimes making sure the enforcement is there to educate people and make clear we got to have social distancing. So now it is easier than ever when you see a crowd, when you see a line that's not distanced, when you see a supermarket that's too crowded, anything, you can report it right away so we can get help there to fix the problem. And now it's as simple as taking a photo.
The Stasi were famous in East Germany for having informants everywhere. In fact, this was also true in the Soviet Union. But the Stasi really applied German, Prussian efficiency to the process of miking up, putting a microphone in every room, in every home in society, and turning everyone into an informant. And in fact, there was a hero within the Soviet Union. I forget his name now. Some of you will be tweeting it out or texting me, I'm sure, or sending me messages in a moment about it. But who was a hero held up as a boy who ratted on his parents to the secret police in the Soviet Union. What a great hero that was. Now, I understand that this is unlike the Stasi and the secret police and the KGB and all the rest of it, in that no one's going to get a photo taken of them lacking the proper social distance outside of a grocery store and be locked up for a long time. But businesses are already under tremendous pressure. People are under a lot of pressure right now. And we're going to encourage one another to take photos and snitch. Here's the problem. Garcetti in L.A., there's that whole snitches get stitches campaign, which was bad, which was about people not speaking out and telling the cops when someone commits a crime. Well, Garcetti has a sort of snitches get riches campaign where if you snitch on somebody for not social distancing or for a business being open, you get money, you get a reward, a bounty system in place. There are so many problems I have with this, my friends. And as I was saying before, it's a reminder that government always overreaches if you let it, that government always wants more power and more authority. The people in charge think they're smarter and wiser and better than they are. That's just the nature of government. That's why our government is built on restraining power. But the things that we're being told to do now, some of them, I'm seeing people running all over New York, jogging with face masks on. This is crazy. You don't need to jog with a face mask on. You're not going to infect anyone when you're jogging because you can maintain more than 6 feet of distance if you're jogging and they're all walking.
This is not about Democrats, Republicans. This is about a thing that hit our country, the likes of which has never happened to us before.
It shouldn't be about Democrat or Republican, but we know that the left has already made it so. We know that they are already doing everything they can to make sure that Donald Trump is not president again because of this crisis, that he is blamed for this crisis, that it's viewed as being his fault. It's on him. Nancy Pelosi, if you're wondering, am I exaggerating this? We'll get to Pelosi. Let them eat cake, Pelosi, or let them eat artisan ice cream. We'll get to her in just a little bit later on in the show again on how little she seems to care about the destruction, that the delay that she is the person she is responsible for, what that's doing to people. But here she is saying that this is really, that the virus is, you hear people say stuff like this, and then when I'll say, on Twitter or somewhere, I'll be like, hey, Democrats, stop saying it's Trump's fault. They say, who says it's Trump's fault? Basically the de facto head of the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi. Play clip 19.
The second bill was mask, 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 and trying to facilitate the personal protective equipment that we don't really have as much as we needed when we needed it because the president wouldn't do Defense Production Act. So the situation we're in is largely of his making, calling it a hoax, saying it would magically disappear, not calling upon the Defense Production Act to protect the workers who are trying to save lives as they risk their own lives in doing so.
Pelosi doesn't give a crap about workers. She doesn't. If she did, how could she explain what she's doing right now, holding up money to get people able to pay their workers so that payroll can continue to be a source of support for millions of workers and their families and the businesses that depend on them spending money? You know, no one's really thinking about the second and third order effects of this shutdown right now. I mean, a few people that I come across are, but for the most part, my friends, good gosh, do you realize how many businesses that exist that employ tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people they're not coming back for perhaps years, if ever. I'm not just talking about small businesses. What, does anyone really think that the tourism industry in the Caribbean is going to be in good shape? Think of how many islands. I know we're not talking about generally American territory here, but think of how many people in the Caribbean or how many people on U.S. soil that work in, tourism industry, places down in, South Beach and Miami and et cetera, et cetera. What's going to happen to them? The hotels are empty. That means that there's no money to pay, the maids, the servers, the staff, the chefs, the bellhops, you name it. Nobody, no money. But Pelosi thinks the problem is Donald Trump. He's trying to get money to them as fast as possible. Look, I think the problem is, and I know that it would have been the pressure they created on this one. Now they finally had it. They finally had the moment where they were able to get Trump to go against his instincts. It's the truth. Trump wanted to Trump wanted to allow the country. Let's be very specific here so that people can't twist what I'm saying, although they'll do it anyway. Jerks. But Trump wanted to allow states to start moving toward greater economic normalcy on Easter Sunday. Remember, that's what he said. They were moving that. He should have. That was the right move. That would have been the right move. But, oh, my gosh, he would have been, throwing grandma off the rooftop if he had done that. I mean, people would have the media and the Democrats and, look, his own experts, his own public health experts who have been wrong, and wrong again on this one. Gee, thanks so much. This is a bit like when I was in the CIA and we had to deal with the reality of, we missed 9/11. And then afterwards, I mean, I wasn't there when that happened, so I can't blame me. But, we missed 9/11. And then afterwards, we're being asked to make all these assessments and calls about things like WMD. We missed that one, too. At what point do people have a right to say, I'm not sure that you guys really know what you're doing? I'm not sure you're really good at judgment or making calls. Maybe you're good at providing basic information. Great. We've gotten that from our healthcare, the healthcare policy people. Remember, I'm always separating out frontline healthcare workers who are saving lives and fighting against the disease for individuals who desperately need it. And that's fantastic. And that's why I'm screaming and cheering out my window every day. And then the healthcare policy people who are the ones making determinations that affect the economy, that affect our lives, that affect the Bill of Rights and individual freedom and rights and federalism. And, those people at that level, not impressed, folks. Not impressed. And I've seen so many conservatives that have just been like, it's not the flu. Thanks. That's really helpful. We know it's not the flu. What do we do about it? Hiding under the bed until the vaccine, which really for a lot of people started to feel like that was what they wanted. That's insane. We can't do that. The country's falling apart. Trump recognizes that. Democrats, look, there are high-level Democrats, Pelosi among them. Doesn't matter how much pain the country goes through as long as Trump doesn't, economic pain, as long as Trump doesn't win. They'll just come in and say, see what he did to you? We'll fix it all. We'll fix it all. Don't worry about it. We'll make everything better. Just really, here's the problem with talking about Biden. They're forcing us into some form of rhetorical elder abuse here. You know, I've been around relatives who have started to have dementia and I've had one case, my great grandmother had really serious dementia. And I remember her being really scared when I'd be a little kid to go visit her. I remember she didn't know who I was, and I've seen all that, and that's heartbreaking for anybody who's been around that and seen that with any family member. But we're also in this position where we're being told that somebody who clearly fades in and out of that kind of, you know, he lacks a certain mental precision these days with Joe Biden, is supposed to be the person who is leading this country at a will be leading this country relatively soon at a very difficult time and making decisions that impact all of our lives. And we're not allowed to talk about that, right? They're putting us in a position where you have someone who seems to be in the early stages of senility. And I really mean this. He really seems that way. But, you know, we don't want to be dismissive or rude about anybody who's dealing with that actual problem in the broader society. So it's almost like he becomes he's going to have the same victim protection the Democrats use for so many other people, right? He gets to go out and talk about how great he'd be in the government, how he'll lecture all of us about how Trump is horrible. And if you say, hold on a second, this guy seems like he's in the early stages of having one too many senior moments, we could call it, then a lot of other people are going to, the Democrats are going to turn around and say to us, how dare you? Look at what you're saying. Do you not respect our seniors? No, I just, you know, I mean, if it's amazing, people will get up into their 90s and have led these incredibly full and amazing lives. That's great. And we should honor them and cherish them. I don't think we should make somebody who's 95 president, for example. And I know Biden's not 95, but he's going to be basically 80. I don't think we should make somebody who's 80 the president. I even think Trump is borderline on the age thing, but he's some kind of I don't know. I mean, the guy's got an inhuman level of energy and vitality and health for someone his age. I've never seen Trump once, you know, I feel like he's too tired or he's out of it. It's unbelievable. I mean, I feel that way sometimes. And I'm 38. Almost forgot. But all right, now the Pelosi politicization effect here and what we're all going through as a result of this. My friends, the claims the Democrats are making here, they're going to run out pretty soon of excuses that people can believe in good faith. And it will just become clear that they want to pile everything they can on the president, even though the states are primarily going to be making these decisions. This is where you're going to hear a lot about testing. The lines about testing. You know, Nancy Pelosi, testing. You're going to keep hearing people talk about this. Well, what's an acceptable level of testing? And understand this, too, that whole system, and this is coming from Dr. Birx, who's a longtime public health policy person, whom I've got to say, based on the briefings, I have more confidence in her than I do in Fauci at this point. But you know, I'm sure they would say they agree on everything, but she just seems a little bit more squared away to me than Fauci sometimes. She said that, look, we've completely changed. The Trump administration has completely changed the ability to look for disease through the mechanisms in the testing system that we have. And here is what she's saying about that. Play 15.
So first, I just want to remind everyone that 4 weeks ago, we were working off of the pandemic platform that had been developed for pandemic flus. And we realized, and the president realized, that we had to change completely how we were doing testing. And that's why we brought in the diagnostic companies that really work on novel tests and brought in the large commercial labs. And I think you could see from the diagrams yesterday that almost 60% of the tests to date have been done by these large commercial labs. But we've also put out an additional 7 platforms for additional tests to make it possible for hospitals to test and clinics to test.
So they've done a lot on this front. And I understand that there's this focus now on we can't really reopen until we have all the testing in place, to which I just say we're talking about we don't know how far this has already spread, and we don't know how long the incubation period is, especially for people who are asymptomatic entirely. I'll get into the serology tests that have already been done that show there are a lot of people that have this disease or have had this disease, have no idea. They feel fine. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you were to ask me, if you were to say, Buck, do you think you have antibodies to this? And I'm going to get the test as soon as I can. Do you think you have antibodies to this? I would bet money that I do at this point, given how much time I've spent on the subway and been around people and been in places where I know there have been people who are one or two individuals removed from my immediate vicinity who had COVID-19. So yes, I think I probably, now I don't know. I'm taking a guess here, but my gut tells me that I think I probably had this. We're being told that testing is the key, but keep in mind, testing to what degree? The numbers, the details here matters, and that's why you've got Governor Ralph. I'm not sure if I was the one in the Klan robe or in the blackface Northam. Remember, Democrat folks, his excuse here was, I don't know if it was me in the Klan robe or me in the blackface, but, I get to still be governor of Virginia. A state that certainly has a history that you'd understand there'd be a bit of elevated sensitivity about issues of race. But if you're a Democrat, you get a pass. Get a pass. He certainly got one. But here's what he says about testing. Play 2.
The president and vice president have been saying over the past few days that the U.S. has enough testing capacity for states to begin opening back up if you feel you're ready to go into phase 1. Is that the case in Virginia? Do you have enough tests to do the tests you need to do?
Jake, that's just delusional to be making statements like that. We have been fighting every day for PPE, and we've got some supplies now coming in. We've been fighting for testing. It's not a straightforward test. We don't even have enough swabs, believe it or not, and we're ramping that up. But for the national level to say that we have what we need, and really to have no guidance to the state levels, it's just irresponsible because we're not there yet.
Now, this guy, he is an MD, which is also noteworthy, especially given what he says about what happens to a baby that survives an abortion, which we all heard him on radio, but we'll talk about that some other time. There's no such thing as enough testing for the Democrats, because this is going to be what they're claiming now is that it's impossible for states because of supply chain and other issues to handle testing on their own. So any shortfall in testing is the federal government's fault, which means that it's Trump's fault, which means that in any state that there's any continuation, not even have to be a spike, a continuation of COVID-19 infections and deaths, it's Trump's fault because of the lack of testing that states couldn't handle, and they were begging the federal government for it. That is the political attack. That's what they're going to do, even though what's enough testing? Nobody has the answer.
Right now, Donald Trump is not doing anything to help my city back on its feet. How am I going to pay for basic services? How am I going to pay for first responders? How am I going to have a restart of my economy if my city's going broke? And I know it's happening all over the country. You're hearing mayors, Republican and Democrat, have talked to them saying, we're not going to be able to make it if we don't get help from the federal government because we've just seen a hit on our budgets, a hit on our cities, a hit on our people that was unestimable. And Donald Trump is silent.
Wait a second. You mean that last week it was governors and mayors to some extent, but governors have all the power. Trump has none of the power. Now it's, oh my gosh, we're all in a sinking ship. We need the federal government to give us lots of money. Well, I've got to say, maybe it would be useful for the states to actually have to live within their budgets and live with the realities of what they've decided to do in different places. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any rescue funds or there shouldn't be any help from the federal government, but it is worth taking a step back to say, well, why wouldn't a state continue the lockdown as long as possible? Keep the lockdown for 90 days. 120 days, the federal, and then just turn around and tell the federal government, money, please. We want money. We're going to pay all the people. Well, the problem with this is, and we're going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, which so far, my friends, look, I'm going to always tell you the truth. I know the Trump administration is running the Paycheck Protection Program with Congress. Remember, Congress appropriates the fund, and Trump is the Trump administration is putting it out there. So far, it's a massively insufficient. It's not a failure. It is a massively insufficient program, which is clear because they need $250 billion more dollars. $250 billion more. To de Blasio's point, you know what states and localities want now? A $500 billion bailout fund. My friends, we are going to spend $6 trillion, $8 trillion, who knows, to try to get us out of this hole We can't do this. It doesn't work. We are putting, by doing this stuff, you're pushing closer and closer to that cliff, at which point there is a collapse of our financial system because the debt that we've accrued is completely unsustainable and people panic. So we have a virus panic that could be followed with a financial panic unless we start getting a handle on all this stuff. And we can't just have the federal government writing endless checks for everything.